While every athlete who takes up a sport professionally plays it considerably well, yet there are always a few names who stand out the most, called the GOAT. If we talk about MMA, there are many big names who come to mind, including Khabib Nurmagomedov. However, in John McCarthy's opinion, Khabib retired too early to be called GOAT. So in today's video, we'll talk about John McCarthy's claim regarding Khabib. First off, what's the whole story? Before this whole thing started, two other personalities had shared a similar opinion that Khabib wasn't the GOAT in UFC because he retired too early. However, John McCarthy's recent statement on Khabib has made waves in the UFC world, and his fans are not happy at all about it. While the UFC president Dana White and Anthony Pettis had earlier expressed their doubts about Khabib's GOAT status, it's John's statement that really stirred up the crowd. John McCarthy, who's a famous MMA personality and had been referring to the UFC fights for some time while taking on a recent episode of Weigh-In, seconded Dana's earlier statement that Khabib wasn't the GOAT in MMA, while John did add that Khabib was probably the most dominant fighter who ever sets his foot inside the cage. He also stated that he's nothing to disagree with Dana. In John's opinion, Khabib overcame a lot of good fighters in 8 to 10 rounds with an apt consistency. However, he believes Jon Jones to be the most talented fighter he'd ever seen. To further his argument, John even brought in some of the stats, commenting that Jones fought 15 times for his title. On the other hand, the number of title fights Khabib had weren't even close to that number. There's a huge difference there, and probably this is why Dana said what he said: Jon Jones was the GOAT. Moving on, what does Khabib's career look like? There's no doubt about it in anyone's mind that Khabib was indeed a great wrestler. He had a white belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a black belt in Judo, and an international master of the sport in Sambo. According to some, he's the best the cage has ever produced. So why is there a debate about him not being the GOAT? Well, first of all, if you're a Khabib fan, the Jon Jones camp does have a point. Khabib only had title fights 3 times, and although he won all 3 of them, he didn't retain his title for long since he retired in 2020 due to personal reasons. Regardless, Khabib was a bright star in the MMA world who left the cage undefeated. He fought 29 fights in his whole MMA career, out of which he never lost a single one. Out of these, Khabib won 8 fights via knockout and 11 by submission. With such a spectacular record, he's indeed one of the best lightweight champions in UFC history. It's worth noting here that Khabib was even inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame in July 2022. However, despite giving us quite a number of memorable and explosive fights, Khabib's journey in the UFC ended in October 2020 when he announced his retirement after the death of his father. Reportedly, UFC and Dana White tried their very best to keep him going in the game or even bring him back into the cage for one last fight. However, the star fighter didn't budge, after which Dana officially announced the acceptance of Khabib's decision on the 19th of March 2021. And now, was Jon Jones really that good? Even if you're a Khabib fan, you'd have to agree that Jones is indeed one good fighter. Hailing from Albuquerque, New Mexico, John kicked off his career in 2008. He's a black belt in Gaido Jutsu and a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He currently fights in the light heavyweight division and has been pretty dominant in his division. He's a standout high school wrestler and a state champion in New York. After making his debut in the MMA, he amassed great fame due to his 6-0 undefeated streak in only 3 months. Before signing up with UFC, he even defeated Moises Gabin at BCX 5 for a USKBA light heavyweight championship title, which made waves in the MMA world. Not only did he win, but he also posted a spectacular technical knockout in the second round. Like Khabib, he's had a long career in MMA. He's had 28 fights up till now and is still active in the game. Out of these 28 fights, Jones has won 26 and lost only 2. Out of his 26 wins, Jones won a staggering 10 fights via knockout, 6 by submission, and the other 10 by decision. Those are some impressive stats indeed. Up next, what's the verdict? Who's better? Well, that's definitely a tricky question to answer. First off, both the athletes are masters in their own fighting styles. While Khabib excels in Sambo, Jones is an expert in Gaido Jutsu, so they've variety when it comes to skills. It's unfortunate that the two couldn't be put against each other considering the different divisions they fight in. We believe it'd have been a great fight. Anyway, moving on to their their career wins record. From the outset, it feels as if Khabib is a clear winner here since he's had 29 career fights with 0 losses, as against Jones's 26 with 2 losses. However, John and Dana have pleaded that Jones has defended his title a whopping 15 times, whereas Khabib only entered the octagon thrice as a champion. This point here is somewhat valid, considering that title fights are just on another level because your opponent is guaranteed to be a tough nut to crack. Nevertheless, it doesn't mean that Khabib hasn't fought any worthy opponents. Like, let's be honest, the man even made the badass Conor McGregor tap out. What more do you expect? Anyhow, Khabib was still in his prime when he decided to retire, and as per the experts, his 0-loss spree could have continued for a few more years. Having said that, we believe both the athletes have their own standing in their respective divisions and command our respect as professionals, though we'd have loved seeing them go against each other in a fight. And now, in other news. First off, Leon Edwards has dethroned Kamaru Usman as the welterweight champion. In a rather shocking turn of events, Leon Edwards managed to dethrone Kamaru Usman to become the new welterweight champion a few nights back in Salt Lake City. The 30-year-old British wrestler has seemingly lost the fight when he unleashed a left high kick in the final round that sent Usman down on the ground. Having secured the title, Leon has become the second ever British fighter to do so after Michael Bisping, who has won one back in 2016. In his press conference afterwards, Edwards got emotional and commented that he'd struggled for the whole 4 years for this day to come. He said that nobody believed that he could do it, and yet here he's with the belt on his shoulder and the word champ by his name. The Jamaican-born British fighter began his professional career back in 2010. As far as the UFC is concerned, Leon made his professional debut against Claudio Silva in November 2014 and was defeated via a split decision. Moving on, Gilbert Burns is all set to fight Jorge Masvidal in another turn of events. Gilbert Burns, who'd been pursuing a matchup with the notorious Masvidal, has finally got his fight. Burns had been asking for a match with Masvidal for quite some months now. However, initially, Masvidal wasn't interested because he wanted to fight Conor McGregor. However, recently, commenting on the status of his pursuit, Burns revealed that Jorge was finally interested in fighting him and had given his verbal approval for the matchup. Since McGregor's busy filming for a remake of the film Roadhouse, Masvidal has decided to have a showdown against Burns. He also revealed that it's now only a matter of time before the UFC officials agreed upon a date for the fight. The fighter also stated that no date has been fixed as of yet, however. It'd most probably be in December or January next year. He also added that he's flexible regarding the venue and date of the fight. While being a Brazilian, he'd certainly like the idea of a fight in his home, since UFC 283 is scheduled to take place in Rio de Janeiro in January. Burns is in no mood to be rigid about those things. And finally, Marlon Vera produced an epic finish against Dominic Cruz. Marlon Vera and Dominic Cruz faced off against each other at the UFC San Diego a short while back. Both the fighters were well within the reach of a shot of the bantamweight championship title when they entered the cage. However, the night proved to be bountiful for Vera, who produced one of the best finishes of 2022 in the match. His brutal head kick caught Dominic flush on the face and sent him down to the ground along with a shattered nose. Cruz, who's a 2-time bantamweight champion, had won his last 2 fights. On the other hand, Vera entered the octagon with a 3-fight win streak. While Cruz appeared to be dominating the fight for the most part, Vera managed to land a few deadly hits on his body and ultimately knocked him out via a kick. That's a wrap for this video. What do you think about John McCarthy's statement regarding Khabib not being the GOAT for retiring early? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.